There's been growing pressure on Rachel Reeves as the government's borrowing costs have gone up. There's been speculation of what the papers are describing as ruthless spending cuts coming. You can see here it all sort of spilled into the big presser yesterday about AI. PM throws Reeves' future into doubt. He actually sort of gave her a vote of confidence yesterday, but it was like the chairman of the football club saying, we support the manager. They have two lame ducks, so this is a second situation involving a minister called Tulip Siddiq and a very complicated alleged corruption story. We'll leave that to one side for a second. And then the Star is going to rehash its lettuce theme because they think she won't last very much longer. The Prime Minister was asked about the future of the Chancellor. He refused to be drawn on whether she would remain in number 11 for the duration of the government's term. This is what he said.
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence. She has the full confidence of the entire party. She was given an incredibly challenging task at the budget because not only was the economy broken, but we had a £20 billion black hole and many, many things that had been identified for spending which didn't have any spending attached to them. So she took the tough decisions. She's right to take the tough decisions.
Well, he defended her having to make those difficult decisions since the party came into power, referring there to some of the more controversial announcements. We think of the winter fuel allowance, we think of the extra tax on employers, etc. I guess I'm tempted to... Shall we hear what the panel think before I hear from you, Jonathan? Let's see what you're up against here. Angela, should he fire his Chancellor?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is not some entry-level trainee who's working in the cash office at the local supermarket. She is the custodian of the nation's finances. There's already been questions about how she might have doctored her CV. They've had 14 years to prepare for this. She made great show of being the first female Chancellor, and I'm saying as a woman with a daughter, that she was going to be a role model for young girls, saying anything is capable and possible. Well, there's a danger in doing that if you then go ahead and muck up the job. Some of the things you've already mentioned, Jeremy, she's driving the economy off a cliff. The economy was growing when Labour came to power, and they've focused repeatedly on this fabled £22 billion black hole. She's fleeced pensioners, she's fleeced farmers, she's taken away the cap on social care. Interest rates are going to go up, inflation is going to rise. International confidence is shot.
What's the cap on social care? Help me with that.
So she has.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So she is scrapping the £86,000 social care cap without putting anything else in place.
But that's something that hadn't come in anyway. Okay,
right,
yeah.
Okay.
Well, Nick, just before it goes, Jonathan is listening carefully.
Sorry, I had a
He has
lift.
come in with the brave sort of prospect of trying to defend the government. So, Nick, you have been supportive of Labour, sort of in theory, until they actually hit the runway.
Yeah, good shot, by the way. Good shot. But the truth of the matter is, he fires her. Excuse me, they're in this together. She didn't cook this budget up, this dreadful budget up, all on her own, like Gordon Brown did, who refused to tell Blair what was in the budget. And Blair used to say, oh, go on, give us a hint what you put. No, these two cooked it up, Starmer and Reeves. And for him now to fire her will look as rankly unfair as trust-firing quasi-quartet.
What's she done wrong, Nick?
Well, what the government has done wrong is to produce a brutal budget. Which
about the winter fuel?
Smacked. But that's got nothing to do with what's happened in the economy and in the markets and so forth. A brutal budget, a mean-spirited budget in the country. They know there are no votes in the country, so they whack the poor old farmers. And frankly, a sop to the far left on school fees, which I think is class.
Okay, so that's another one. Yeah.
However.
Okay. All right.
He shouldn't fire up.
Go let Jonathan have a go.
He was
here.
in on it too.
Well, so Nick has been, I think, sympathetic to Labour up until quite recently, Jonathan. This is terrible for you guys.
Well, look, should he fire her? Absolutely not. And remember, this is 6 months in. When this government was elected 6 months ago, it inherited an absolutely burning skip in the public finances because of the mess that people like Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng and then Rishi Sunak had made when it came to public expenditure. She had to take some very, very tough decisions to stabilise the public finances. Had she hadn't have done that, people's mortgages would have been going up. Now, what we've seen recently is turbulence, international turbulence in the international money markets. And because we're a very open economy, we're very exposed to that international turbulence, which means borrowing costs have gone up. But we don't yet know what that means for the future public finances, because we will get from an organisation called the Office for Budget Responsibility their assessment in March of what that means for the public finances.
But this is about the politics.
Yeah.
She took away 300 quid from 10 million pensioners without realising how angry they'd be.
No,
and she's a politician.
Yeah, and I've actually, been a bit critical of that. However, it is worth reminding people that the pensioners now get the triple lock, which is a very generous uplift in the pension every year. When that winter fuel payment...
makes them angrier. When you say that, it just makes people angrier. Because you're taxing them.
But look, I mean, like a long time ago, I used to work for Gordon Brown. That winter fuel payment was brought in by Gordon Brown in the days before there was a triple lock, right? Now pensioners get the triple lock, which is a very generous uplift.
OK, we've got calls. Darren in West Yorkshire. Do you have any sympathy for Rachel Reeves, Darren?
No, I don't have no sympathy for the party, full stop. Well, more or less, I'm seeing it since Elon opened Pandora's box as well. That Labour's basically took Britain into a Watergate scandal 2.0, which is going to bring down the establishment, and it's only took 6 months, where the original took.
What's the scandal? I'm missing. I mean, the scandal was like free Taylor Swift tickets and glasses, and that seems to have passed now, although it did some damage. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about Labour basically being unfit for purpose. In matter of fact, the entire ruling class.
Well, yeah, OK.
They've shown for 25 years that they're just unfit.
Well, maybe so. Thank you, Darren. Maybe we just don't have politicians of calibre now. I just don't know. No disrespect. Stephen in Cheshire. I mean, you were lucky at the end there. It widened so much you don't even have to respond. Stephen in Cheshire, hi.
Yes, good morning to you all there.
I'm just going to show you something. I don't know if you can see your TV, but the Mail put this out. And people said, you know what? They would never do that with the bloke. They would never say, OK, where he was happy before he took power and now he's got bags under his eyes. And people are piling onto her in a way that may feel unfair, Stephen.
Oh, come on.
Well, let's just look at the vulnerability of pensioners and where this government may look at other vulnerable people in this country. The Chancellor has to go, first of all, to give an indication to the British people that public opinion, which is rife against this government right now in such a short space of time after being elected, that they're going to re-look at the financial policies they're going to implement. If they're going to continue with Rachel Reeves and the Prime Minister is happy to back her, regardless of the public opinion currently right now, then all sorts of other vulnerable people in this country are going to be worried to death. And
but Jonathan makes the point that the pension rise is coming down the line, which will make up for the winter fuel allowance cut.
No, I'm sorry, but the cost of living in this country for people as a whole is shocking.
Yeah. Jonathan, you answer.
And I just want to say
Let me put you on to the former the Shadow Minister.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The cost of living is a big problem because we had inflation in the system because some of the daft decisions the previous Tory government made. That's why one of the announcements Rachel Reeves made is a big increase in the national minimum wage so that poorer workers are getting an uplift. It's also why those tax changes that she brought in, it had to be on businesses because she didn't want to put up your income tax and your national insurance. I'm assuming you're an employee, I don't know, but like the employees' tax take. And on the pensioners, remember the poorest pensioners still get the winter payment and they will get a significant increase in the state pension come April.
Well, Angela, you're rolling your eyes at that.
I'm just so respectfully, Jonathan, because I don't know you. I mean, you seem a fairly nice chap. But I'm so bored with Labour politicians or former Labour politicians, supporters of the party, looking backwards and saying it's because they did it that we're doing it. You had 14 years to prepare for this. You know, the Labour Party focused on growth. They said the way to get the economy moving is to put everything into growth. How do small businesses in particular grow? How do you foster the entrepreneurial spirit when you hike up national insurance. You've got the Employment Rights Bill coming through, which is going to make things very difficult for employees. You've got no international confidence. Investors don't want to come to this basket case country because there's no confidence in the markets here. And to keep bleating on and on, respectfully, about what went before, when there's a huge dispute about
Go on,
the
we'll let
22
Jonathan
billion
answer.
anyway.
Yeah, but when you walk into somewhere and you realise you've got to clear up the previous lot's mess, that's going to impact some of the decisions you're making.
Part of it was COVID, though, wasn't it? Part of it was COVID.
COVID, Ukraine, and plus the fact that there's been huge dispute around the 22 billion. But even if that was the case, 14 years in preparation, Rachel Reeves, she came to this position and said, I've been waiting for this. Girls, watch me. I'm going to be the Chancellor that's going to fix it. And what you say, Jeremy, about them taking a pop at her being a woman, as it happens, the male would do it to men as well, A. And B, she's the one that's made a virtue about being a woman. I'm your first female Chancellor, girls. Look at me.
I mean, I
so
agree.
she's
I
asked
agree.
for
I
it.
mean, I think I remember them having a go at Rishi Sunak when he was wet through and made a right idiot of himself,
Absolutely.
launched the election campaign.
True. They had James Purnell was one of your ministers, and they did a big piece on how he was dyeing his hair.
Right.
At which point he stopped. So yes, it probably isn't a female thing. You're quite right. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, but look, this government does have to clear up the mess, and now it is clearing up the mess. It's investing in the National Health Service. It's investing in skills and apprenticeships. It's investing in AI, which is going to completely transform the economy. So we are going to see growth, and it's a 4-year programme to get growth back in the economy. But you're right, we should be supporting the business community. I'm very in favour of that. But you've got to do it by stabilising the public finances and giving people the skills. When I talk to business, one of the big complaints, they do complain about tax. I'm not going to pull your leg and pretend they don't. Of course they do. But they also complain that they cannot get workers with the skills that they need. We've got to really invest in apprenticeships and skills in this country.
All right, thank you, Jonathan, for coming in, and we'll take more calls from you. Now, more calls on Keir Starmer, who's not having fun. Should he sack his Chancellor? This whole question overshadowed his big AI launch yesterday, 0207 862 2222. Got loads of calls on this. We just had the former Shadow Minister, Jonathan Ashworth, in, who says, early days. David in Southampton, it is early days, isn't it, David?
Well, yes, but as far as I'm concerned, let her carry on,
Carry on, yeah.
I spoke yesterday, but never got on, with regard to the honesty of the British people. I think everybody's going on about the winter fuel allowance and all this sort of stuff. If people were honest with themselves, that they would say, well, we didn't really, we don't really need it anyway because we're spending money, that money on something else.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, some people aren't able to heat their homes, David.
There are people out there who need help, and those people can obtain help.
Yeah,
there are a lot of people out there. I mean, it's exactly the same with the 3 panellists you have there now, right? Do they need their winter fuel allowance, even though they were able to obtain it?
I'm offended you think I'm old enough for a winter fuel allowance,
well,
David.
there's that.
No.
But also, why shouldn't Angela have one? She's paid her taxes.
Exactly.
Why? I mean, look, whether the system is right in terms of whether we should have an opt-in, opt-out system. So we're going to say it again, Jeremy, I know you're bored of this. Mick Jagger, whether he needs his winter fuel, it's always Jagger.
It is Jagger, bless him. And I don't even know whether he's in Britain much anymore.
Yeah.
What about Michael Caine?
Michael Caine. Does Michael Caine let him opt out? So maybe we need to rewrite the paperwork. But people, a lot of pensioners are not sitting around, on cruises. They're not playing golf. They are deciding between heating and eating, and it's become a cliche.
David, do you think there is a lot of cruising going on?
Well, I'm a cruiser. I'm 77 years of age.
Blimey.
Since I retired at 67, I've been cruising, or we've been cruising.
Locally or?
Years ago, the reason I'm saying this is years ago, our parents used to have little tins. Right, my mother used to have old Holborn tins. Other tins are available.
Oh, tins, yeah.
And she used to put £10 there, so and so there, so and so there, so and so there. Now, what happens with your winter fuel allowance?
Okay,
it goes
David.
directly into your bank. So you don't.
Yeah, go on. Nick wants to say something. David, Nick's.
1 second, because I think we've covered this before. There are 11.3 million pensioners in the country, of whom 1.3 million get the housing benefit, okay? Frankly, and above that 1.3 million, there will be some who are hard up but not quite hard enough to get that. And I would suggest that it was a foolish thing to do to give every pensioner winter fuel allowance. Certainly give it to those 1.3 and another's wedge. But otherwise, are you fighting?
There's a good argument for it, Nick. I mean, you've missed, with the greatest respect, you misunderstood the way the tax system. You've paid a shed load of tax. You want to get something back. Otherwise, you're going to say, as a multimillionaire, you're going to say, what am I paying all this tax for?
Yeah.
I don't even get my winter. So it brings you, Jagger, Elton John, people who can afford it, are made to feel a part of it. And the funny thing is, on the left, they really like universal benefits.
And who's paying for this winter fuel tax? The taxpayer is.
Yeah, quite right. Yeah.
Well, you can't have it both ways.
Well, the taxpayer, but if you're somebody who's contributed to the tax system your entire life, then, as Jeremy says, then you have an expectation that part of the reason you pay your taxes, apart from roads and hospitals and all the other thing, is that you will get something back at the time when you need it. That's the whole point of being a...
Let's go back to... But is it good? No, I'm not... Listen, I'm not in any way being insolent. I'm just sort of thinking that there is actually a very strong argument for rich people getting the winter fuel allowance, weirdly. Thank you, David. Fascinating phone call. Avril's in Manchester. We go back to Rachel Reeves. Should she resign?
I have no idea whether she should resign or not, because my question is who's going to take her place and how are they going to do it differently?
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say was all these pensioners who are having to apply for pension credit, a lot of whom are elderly and not tech savvy, and the forms are a nightmare. Surely the information on income belongs with the Inland Revenue. If you're a taxpayer, then you're over the threshold, so you don't get the fuel allowance. If you're not paying tax, then you're entitled to it. And you
it's a bit
whole load of paperwork.
I appreciate that. It's things like your house. I think it's your house value is factored in. Is it or not? Is your house value factored in? I don't know.
That's the problem.
And the thing is, I know what you mean about these forms. And Gordon Brown was always blamed for multiplying the number of pages on every form, because he wanted to really accurately work out what everyone had. But of course, it puts people off. Thank you, Avril. Robert in Hertfordshire. Do you think it's time for a new Chancellor this early?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I mean, she's made too many mistakes, but Starmer's got to be to blame as well. I mean, if people keep on about the fuel allowance, it's gone. Forget it. There's more important things like, I mean, this national insurance stamp. I mean, I live in Ledbury, Herefordshire, not Hertfordshire, and there's a factory that's going to close down now, 155 people, because the stamp. There's a lot of these places are closed and not working. Even building sites are laying people off.
I saw a piece, and it might even be in Bedfordshire. The thing you're talking about is a place that's been trading since the 1700s, and they've suddenly said, "Look, we're really sorry, but this thing of we've given everyone a pay rise through the national living wage means the companies have to pay it, and they've got to pay national insurance, and they're really hurting."
Oh, tragically.
I don't know.
People are not hiring. Small companies with low-wage employees, they're not hiring. I think they just got it entirely wrong.
But isn't it... this is why I think she has to go. I mean, I am not an economist, newsflash, but it just seems so spectacularly myopic to not see that this would be the outcome of that kind of budget.
But she had to raise tax. She had to have more money in. She thinks she doesn't want to do it through cuts, because their whole agenda is we're not going to thin out the NHS any further. And the NHS is the main thing, and the pensioners as well, as the two main areas of government spending. So you have to raise taxes. But they had also said, we won't raise VAT, we won't raise income tax. They had ruled a whole load of things out.
And what about,
so they were left with just taxing employers.
And what about the inflation-busting pay rises for the likes of
that's particularly
train drivers?
The train drivers' pay rises, she might, if she revisited it, she might take a different decision. Let's go to Raymond in Essex. Do you think it's curtains for Rachel Reeves, Raymond?
Yes, it certainly should be, actually. I mean, but what I'm phoning about is Mr. Ashworth. He keeps on, and they do it all the time on the Labour Party, about the pensioners getting the triple lock. We did get the triple lock, and it was fantastic. I think it was £920 this year. My rent went up £840.
Right.
and then the rates went up. So we're worse off now than we were a year ago. And I wish they would stop going on about this. It's ridiculous behaviour. They hit the pensioners left, right and centre, and it's unbelievable what's going on.
Also, of course, your pension any private pension takes you into a tax bracket. That's the other thing.
I don't have a private pension. My wife I'm on a full state pension. My wife is on half a state pension because she looked after the children when we had them. We do survive.
Okay, Raymond.
We cut back on everything. It's ridiculous to keep saying it.
Thank you so much. Just cutting off because we've got to go to our break. Later, should we ban cake in nurseries?